Okay. Okay, so how many of you have worked on object-oriented JavaScript? You wrote object-oriented JavaScript. Anyone else? So, why do you say that you had done object-oriented JavaScript? That is, have you ever used the keywords like class, extends, public, private, protected, etc.? No? But still you have done object-oriented JavaScript programming. So that is in the initial period, that is when we were learning C programming language, that is it was considered as a functional language because it didn't have classes. Then we learned C++, which has class, and we had learned a lot of things about object-oriented concepts like inheritance, polymorphism. Then what are the other concepts that you learn? Inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction, encapsulation, etc. Right? So then we thought that, okay, classes are something that makes a programming language object-oriented. Later in PHP also, initially it was not object-oriented programming language. Later they introduced classes in PHP and made it object-oriented. But JavaScript doesn't have classes. Then how could you say that it is an object-oriented programming language?
JavaScript doesn't have classes. Yes, that is right. But this is a misconception that without classes, a programming language cannot be object-oriented. See, the way I see it is, a language is object-oriented if you can create objects for it, right? It doesn't matter if you have classes or not. So there are two different ways of creating objects. One is a normal classical method, and another one is based on prototypes, which will be explained by Suresh. So in JavaScript, what it does is it uses the prototype-based object-oriented pattern. So it doesn't have class, yes, but you can create objects with it, and everything about JavaScript is an object, and it is an object-oriented language.
Okay. So one popular myth was JavaScript is not an object-oriented programming language just because it doesn't have classes, but it is not the case. JavaScript is an object-oriented language because it handles objects, and all the properties like inheritance, encapsulation, and everything is possible using JavaScript, and Suresh will be explaining that to you. Okay. Then actually I learned JavaScript initially, I think it was in 2001. Okay. And I went for a course, Java, and they gave me some textbook like Java, JavaScript, RMI, etc. So I was under assumption that JavaScript was something as part of Java. And many people who are new to JavaScript still believes that. So is there any relationship between Java and JavaScript? Why does they use the prefix Java in JavaScript? You people are telling that there is no relation. So the relationship between Java and JavaScript is just like the relationship between car and carpet. So Srinath, just tell me why actually.
There is no relationship between Java and JavaScript. We all know it. But why did the name Java came up in JavaScript? There's a little bit of story behind it. The story is JavaScript was created by Netscape, and the Netscape browser was the most popular browser at that time. There was some big competition, big browser wars happening between Internet Explorer and Netscape at that time. So what the Netscape did is Netscape wanted to make it better. So the most popular language at that time was Java, and that was with Sun. So it was a deal, sort of a deal between Sun Microsystems, which had the best programming language at that time, and sorry for that, and Netscape, which had the most user-based browser, and thus, based on that deal, this was mostly a marketing campaign to popularize this new language which was created, and it did become popular.
Okay. So the name was just for popularity.
It was only for popularity. Yes, okay. That's it.
So this was another myth that Java has some relationship with JavaScript, but it doesn't. Next one, JavaScript is an inconsistent and buggy. That is, many of you are popular with this error screen, right? And so it works in well, sometimes it doesn't show that error in Mozilla, and it works in some browsers and it doesn't work in some other browsers. So isn't it a buggy language? Is it? We always worry that is why it didn't work, and sometimes it works and we do not know why. Sometimes it doesn't work, so we do not know why it doesn't work.
It is not a buggy language.
Why?
It's a very good language. The language is standardized. Uh, JavaScript is a language which is standardized. It is not a buggy language. Uh, but
Uh, who standardized Java? JavaScript? W3C? ECMA? Normally all HTML, CSS, you know, who standardizes the web? W3C, right? So is W3C the team who standardized JavaScript? We do W3C validations, etc. Right? Is W3C the people who standardize JavaScript? Maybe, right? No? Then ECMI. So what is the story in this ECMI? That is anything related to web normally is standardized by W3C, and why doesn't JavaScript get standardized by
it is
W3C?
because W3C doesn't standardize programming languages as such. So if it's HTML, CSS, all those stuff, they are standardized by W3C. But then ECMA is the agency, as he said, which standardized JavaScript. So again, for the earlier question which you asked, JavaScript is a standardized language, but this Java, when you write your JavaScripts, you are accessing browser objects and writing it in different ways, right? Now, when you access those browser objects, the way browser interprets it by means of its rendering engine is different. The way it does for Mozilla is not the same it does for Chrome or for any other browser. It varies because of its implementation. So it's because of that this inconsistencies happen. I think Deepu can give you a very detailed explanation of how a browser renders a web page. What happens inside it.
So we have been using browsers since long, that is since we started using internet. So how many of you know how a browser architecture is? What all are the components of browser? Web browser, there are a lot of browsers, right? So everything has something in common. What are they? It has a user interface, a presentation layer which we see in a browser, right? Where we type in www.google.com and then it gets, some website gets displayed there. So it has a front end, UI. Browser has a UI. Then what should be there with the browser? DOM. Okay. DOM is not, that is a component of browser. Document object is there, but this has a browser engine. Okay. UA. Then it has a rendering engine which renders the HTML code, right? Based on DOM concepts or DOM principles. Then it has a networking component that handles the request, send it to the server, get the response, and serve the browser. It has a JavaScript engine which handles the JavaScript. Then there is also a backend UI. So we can see that what actually each does. Okay, it has an interface engine, browser engine, rendering engine, network component, JavaScript interpreter, UA backend, and for data persistence, for example, cookies and something that we have to store. There is a data persistence component. Okay. So what happens when we actually type in www.google.com in a browser? What happens next? How does this website get loaded in our page? That is our need, right? So actually the request gets passed to the browser engine, and then it goes to the networking component because it need to identify the server and take the request to that server. So before that, we need to identify the IP address of that server. So DNS server deals that, and that is from that domain. It is converted to the IP address, and it hops to the server. And in the server, that is there may be a web server that is receiving that request and sending the processed output back to the requested part. So here the networking engine network. There is even a or render it properly, and we think that this is taught, it is more strict in auditing our code. And Mozilla, it passes many of the things and it will show properly in Mozilla. That is why many things work properly in Mozilla but doesn't in IE. So there are different rendering engines. So Gecko is by Firefox, Trident is by Internet Explorer. Right now it is Chakra, right?
For Internet Explorer, it is Chakra right now.
And WebKit is the rendering engine for Safari. Billing is for Billing or Blink?
Blink.
Blink? Okay. For Chrome and Opera, which is a fork of WebKit itself. So this is the different versions of browser engine that we said, and it is different for each. And next one is JavaScript engine. We saw that there are different browser engines, then different JavaScript engines that was created by different companies, browser companies. For example, some JavaScript engines are developed in C++, some are in Java. For example, SpiderMonkey was the first one to be created, and it was a Netscape Navigator, right?
It was created by Netscape Navigator. The person who created JavaScript, Mr. We'll deal with that later.
Brendan
Yes.
H.
So Mr. Brendan created the first JavaScript interpreter. The JavaScript interpreter is also called as JavaScript engine, interpreter, everything. It's all the same stuff. So that was the first interpreter. After that, at that time, Explorer didn't have any interpreter at all. Right? So then the different browsers came in, and later slowly a sort of a competition started creating between these browsers because they all wanted to become the fastest browser. There was big browser wars which happened.
The problem is like JavaScript engine has a very important part in the speed of the or performance of the browser. So the fastest, the browser which has the fastest JavaScript engine will be the best one available. So there was a competition.
and that is when Chrome came into picture. When Chrome came in, Chrome was the fastest. It had the fastest JavaScript engine at that time. But then different browsers started creating their own versions of it, and they were like moving ahead. For example, SpiderMonkey had another release of a just-in-time compiler called the Trace Monkey, and then it became faster. Safari implemented something called a Squirrel Fish on their engine called the Nitro. That's how it became popular, and then it became faster. And everyone was doing the same thing. Chrome, what they did is, again, they did some more improvements and came up with a V8, a new version of engine which is used right now, and it was like very, very fast. But I think the fastest browser as of now is Mozilla Firefox. It is the fastest.
Goes on and people.
It
Oh,
continues.
he's a Mozilla volunteer. That is okay. So we had talked about two myths. One is it is not a buggy language, JavaScript, and second one is it is not standardized by W3C. It is standardized by ECMA. ECMA, European Computer Manufacturers Association. Yeah. So next one is like where do we find JavaScript? Where do we use JavaScript? For website, right? Hmm? In the client side for website. So it just serves the web. But JavaScript has become the most popular language right now, and it is said like it has very vast usage, or a lot of each and every programmer, whichever programming language they are using, they used to implement some JavaScript. So if it does just serves web, how could it be so popular?
It doesn't serve just web. There are lots and lots of other places where JavaScript is used. For example, yeah, the JavaScript is used in the email client called the Thunderbird. Most of you might be using Thunderbird. It's used in managing different processes within Mozilla browser. It's used by cross-platform programming developers for programming their stuff. It's used in making widgets. There are server-side lots of JavaScript implementations which is happening right now. It's used within PDFs. It's supported by LibreOffice in lots of stuff. There are lots and lots of places where this is being used, not just.
So
browsers.
another myth was like JavaScript just serves web, but it is not the case. So now let's see how JavaScript evolution happened. Anybody here know who is the father of JavaScript? Who is known as the father of Java? How does this get created? When did it get created? Who? Why? When? Where? For validation purposes, right? Locally. Okay. So initially in the web, that is when this is the first website ever in the world, and it was done by, do you know him? Who is he? He is the father of internet. I am just talking about this part. That is, he was the first person who did the first website, and at that time, we just had a static web page. And whenever something clicks, it need to go to the server, communicate with the server, and get back if you want to go to the next page. No validations, nothing. So somebody created JavaScript. Thought about JavaScript. Why couldn't we validate at least the user data? That is, we have a form typing something. Why should we send it to the server to know that whether it is right or wrong, whether it is a valid email ID or not? Why couldn't we handle it in the front end itself? So somebody thought about that. It was Mr. Brendanish. I pronounce it as Brendanish. He might be pronounced
Brendan.
Mr. Brendan. Okay, let's call it as Mr. Brendan. He was an employee. He was working at Netscape Navigator, and even though Netscape was not the first browser, Netscape and Internet Explorer were the two most popular browsers at that time. So, saying it out, I feel. So they brought in new scripting language called JavaScript. Its name was not JavaScript. Its name was Mocha. So he developed it in 10 days time. So it was just to do some basic validations, and they incorporated it in network Netscape Navigator. Sorry. So what happened is that Netscape Navigator became more popular than Internet Explorer. And what happened is that
Yeah, in May 1995 was when this was created. This language called Mocha, but this was renamed again. It was named Mocha by Mr. Mark Anderson, who created Netscape. But that name wasn't liked by people, so they renamed it again called LiveScript, and that was again renamed as JavaScript in the very same year. So it was in JavaScript.
why did they rename it as JavaScript? Why?
So in the same year, they renamed it to JavaScript. Um, and then in the next year, what they did is as of now, JavaScript was only used in Netscape, and that was not enough. They wanted to popularize this to other browsers as well. So they wanted a body who would standardize this, and that is when they gave this to ECMA.
Same time, that is Internet Explorer was already came up with JScript, which was a copy of this, but they told that it has some extra features. But still, JavaScript was better. And I think that is they had some persuasion to Netscape to submit it for ECMA.
Yeah, there was big problem at that time. Also, IE wasn't supporting JavaScript, and it was not supporting JavaScript properly for a very long time, and that is why there were lots of problems within JavaScript, because they followed something similar to JavaScript called the JScript. And then what happened is ECMA came up with the first. They created a standard for it called ECMA 262. That is the standard for JavaScript. And then they came up with new ECMA script variations called ECMA script 2, ECMA script 3, etc., etc. And then our guy, Mr. Brendan, he joined. Brendan is the co-founder of Mozilla Corporation. He started the Mozilla Corporation, and they joined ECMA, and they started a new work called the E4X in order to improve JavaScript big time. And then Macromedia came in.
Macromedia came in, and they developed ActionScript 3 based on ECMA standards. Okay.
At that time, again, there was problem between people, because they started a new version of JavaScript called as ECMA script 4, and there was big problem between two companies, certain companies.
Yeah. Actually, Yahoo and Microsoft were against releasing the ECMA 4, and they told that
opposed it.
Yeah.
They opposed it, yeah, because the features which went to ECMA 4 was different, and it was not what they wanted. So they wanted a new version called ECMA 3.1, and there was like big clashes happening between those two people, and that is when someone came into the picture.
So it is not actually he came into the picture. So that is the period where the open source contributors came to the picture, and they started giving a lot of open source contributions. Same time, do you know him? Jesse James Garrett. He is the person who coined the name Ajax. In his white paper, the white paper name was a new approach to web application in 2005 February. Actually, XML HTTP request, you know, right? So it has been it is just an API to communicate with the server. So he named it as Ajax, and it started becoming more and more popular. And starting that period, there were a lot of new things that was not JavaScript capable of doing before came into existence, and all the new JavaScript libraries came into picture.
Lots of people. I mean, that was a boom time for open source contributions as far as JavaScript was concerned. Lots of open source developers came in and started creating lots and lots of libraries, like all of this: jQuery, Dojo, MooTools, Prototype. They all came in at that time, and there were lots of development happening. And then JavaScript started becoming very, very, very popular. And then came the ECMA 5. ECMA 5 is like the standard which those two people, we talked about two people who were arguing. They came together, there was some consensus, and they came forward with the ECMA script 5 notation, and we currently have the 5.1. That is what is in use currently. So
and ECMA script is the standard that everyone follow, even the action script.
So all of this should stick to their standards if they are making new updates.
So that is a race of the planet of the JavaScript. Right now, JavaScript has become. That is previously JavaScript was like this, and right now it is like this, right? So that make you feel like this when you think about modifying JavaScript. Okay, so we should. I think Suresh could take us to a level where we show this emotion. What is
Very
this?
comfortable with everything. Whatever you say, you can like see and like, all right, this is where the problem is.
Okay, so let's go back. That is all for our session. We just talked about what are things that we talked today. At first, we just talked about some myths about JavaScript. Which all were the myths? First one, Java and JavaScript has no relation. It is just like car and carpet. Okay. Object-oriented JavaScript is an object-oriented programming language, even though it doesn't has class notation. Then it is not an inconsistent language. It is standardized by ECMI, and it is not by W3C. Okay. Then we spoke about browser engines. Did you get anything from this slide? That is a basic idea about how the browser engine works. What are the components that we have in browser engine? The browse network component. Network component. You will be the first person. UA component that we see. Then JavaScript engine, rendering engine, browser engine, rendering engine. Then one backend UA. Backend UA is just like all the native components, like that is checkbox, drop down, etc. It has some style, and backend UA engine is something that handles with those things. Okay. Then we talked about the rendering engine. So rendering engine, what does it do? It collects the information and it need to be passed, and at first it create a DOM tree. Then it creates a rendering tree with the CSS, and then it start drawing using the dimensions. Then it start painting, right? And there are different rendering engines. Anyone rendering engine name? Hmm? What is the rendering engine used in Mozilla? Right? So the tip is simply blink or blink, as Sudha says, it is a fork of WebKit used in Chrome and Opera. Then we talked about the JavaScript engine, SpiderMonkey, V8, Squirrelfish, and Chakra, etc. Then another thing that we talked about is it is not just serving web. Then we went to the evolution of JS. Who is the father of internet? This is the first ever web, and Tim Berners-Lee. Then who is the father of JavaScript or Mocha? It is Brendan H. It was changed as LiveScript, and later it was renamed as JavaScript just for popularity purpose. And later it got standardized by ECMI as ECMI script. Okay, and JScript, ActionScript, JavaScript, etc. Everything is standardized based on ECMI script. And right now we have ECMI 5.1, right? And Jesse James Garrett, he coined the term Ajax, and which made web capable of doing much more things that was not possible before. Then came all the libraries, and more open source contributors came, which made JavaScript more rich, and that is a price. And in the beginning, it was something. When we look, we know that. Later, it changed in this way, and when we see JavaScript, it is like this. Okay. So who will help you in this to understand JavaScript? Only you can. Because you have to get some basic understanding of the JavaScript. That is what is the object-oriented pattern. So at least you can, that is when you see a script, that is you download a script and you want to make some minor modification in that, you have to get that flow. That is what is the actual flow that is happening in this JavaScript. So the session of Suresh is mostly aimed for that. That is, it doesn't mean that he will make you JavaScript expert, object-oriented expert after this session, but at least you should be able to understand what happens there. Okay.